Hello and good morning, and you're welcome to today's Signpost webinar. We hope you're keeping safe and well wherever you're joining us from on a fine Friday morning here today. We know that biodiversity in Ireland is under significant pressure. Over 90% of Ireland's protected habitats are in poor condition, and iconic species like the curlew and freshwater pearl mussel are critically endangered. Pollinator populations, vital for agriculture and ecosystems, are also in steep decline, and we know that urgent action, coordinated action is needed to restore habitats and integrate biodiversity conservation into farming and land use practices. And a new pioneering EU-wide project called FarmBioNet, which aims to enhance biodiversity-friendly farming practices in Europe by stimulating knowledge exchange between farmers, foresters, researchers, advisors, and other key stakeholders, has recently been launched. And to tell us more about the project, we're delighted to be joined by Dr Meritxell Grau Butinyac, who is project manager with the FarmBioNet project based in Teagasc, Johnstown Castle. Good morning, Meritxell. You're very welcome.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks so much for the introduction.
And we're also joined by Dr Catherine Keena, who's countryside management specialist with Teagasc, who's going to help us out with questions later. Good morning to you, Catherine.
Good morning.
So before we start, Meritxell, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your own background and how you got involved in this project.
Yeah, of course. So my background is actually in soil microbiology and soil molecular ecology, as well as nitrous oxide emissions. That's what I did my PhD on, and I actually did it here in Johnstown Castle in Teagasc. After I finished my PhD in 2022, I went to industry and I was working in a research and development department focusing on water quality technologies. So we were producing analyzers for monitoring nitrates and nitrites in water, especially aquaculture, as well as wastewater treatment plants. And during this time, I was also managing European projects the department was involved in, and that's when I found a passion for project management. And I realized we need someone to do all this admin work for the research to happen. And that's where I then came along here to crack on with FarmBioNet.
Excellent. And obviously, having that background, that environmental science background, I'm sure has been a big support there as well, and really important for you
Definitely.
to understand those dimensions. So I'm going to ask you to, if you could, you have some slides to share with us.
Yeah.
We're going to take some questions afterwards. Please, if people have questions, send them through using the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. Today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Teagasc website, YouTube channel. And of course, we have the podcast version available. If you can't find a time to sit down and watch it on screen, you can tune into it on the move. So Meritxell, we'll hand over to you for the slides and look forward to discussing afterwards.
Thanks so much. So I'll get started. As Mark said, I'm going to be talking about the project FarmBioNet, who I'm the project manager of. FarmBioNet stands for Farmer-Focused Biodiversity and Agricultural Knowledge Network. So I will kick off with a bit of a project overview, which Mark has briefly mentioned. So the aim of the project is to enhance biodiversity-friendly farming practices, which we'll be referring to as BFF. And these practices is to enhance them in Europe by stimulating knowledge exchange between key stakeholders, farmers, foresters, researchers, advisors, and any other key stakeholder. So first of all, why is the project focusing on BFF practices? So biodiversity-friendly farming practices are key agricultural practices that can prove to be a win-win for both the farmers and local nature. And I think the abbreviation is really fitting. It can be biodiversity-friendly farming practices or best friends forever with biodiversity. So I think that's really important, and it plays a really huge role in emphasizing the importance of biodiversity by having that abbreviation. So what are those practices actually promoting? They are promoting the support and enhanced richness of abundance of biodiversity, so diversity across the farmlands. They are also promoting deliver co-benefits for climate change mitigation as well as adaptation, and also restore and protect healthy ecosystem functions while producing agricultural products. So while these practices are promoting all these aspects, why is it important for these practices to be present in farmland, and why is the project focusing on these practices as well as the knowledge transferred across stakeholders, both at Irish level, since we're a partner in the project, but also at European level with the rest of our consortium? So the key aspect here is that there is a continuous loss of biodiversity. I will be focusing on Europe at the moment. So biodiversity on European farmland has continued to decline. Biodiversity-rich agriculture systems are important because they are more resilient to climate change and crop diseases. Biodiversity is also beneficial and essential for agriculture by promoting ecosystem services. And what are we referring to when we refer to ecosystem services? So ecosystem services refer to maybe healthy soils, pollinator populations, pest regulation, increased water storage capacity. These are just some examples of ecosystem services that biodiversity can benefit. And finally, biodiversity preservation is crucial for ensuring agricultural production. So I think at this point, it's really important to picture biodiversity as a net, as a safety net on farmland. And obviously, the stronger and the more interwoven this net is, the stronger the net is and the stronger biodiversity is. And I think that's key on understanding why it's so important to have a highly diverse biodiversity present in farmland. So as I mentioned, biodiversity is continuing to decline in Europe farmland, but what does European farmland look like? So let's have a look at that. All the statistics I'm going to be mentioning at the moment are from 2020 Eurostat document. You can see the graph here on the left. The graph is showing how all the different farms across Europe are grouped by specialization. So as you can see, there's a great diversity. And as of 2020, there were 9.1 million agricultural holdings in Europe. And of these 9.1 million, the majority of the highest percentage was present in Romania with a 31%, and it was followed by Poland with a 14%, Italy with a 12%, and Spain with a 10%. So it gives an idea of where most of these agricultural holdings were present within European state members. Also, of those holdings, about 93% of the farms were classed as family farms. And what is a family farm? European Union describes the family farm as a farm on which 50% or more of the agricultural force is provided by family members. And of these farms, as of 2020, 63.8% of them were less than 5 hectares in size, while only 7.5% were of 50 hectares or more in size. So there is a clear difference on the proportion on size of those farms present throughout Europe. And finally, farms manage around 46.4% of the total land area of the EU. And on this statistic, what was taken into account was farms, it was wooded areas, as well as other farmland that was not used for agriculture. And I think it's also important to mention that some of these farms across Europe, they are also present or are occurring inside Natura 2000 sites. So now I'll be talking about those Natura 2000 sites. Some of you might be familiar with them, some of you may not. So Natura 2000 sites is actually a network, and it's the world's largest network of protected areas in Europe. The network extends across all 27 European member states, and it's vital for habitats for rare species and unique ecosystems. The European Biodiversity Strategy 2030 calls for significant improvements in the conservation status of species and habitats, so these Natura 2000 sites are really important. And as of now, the network is protecting 18% of Europe's land, as well as 9% of marine areas. And these Natura 2000 sites are protected through a series of policy instruments, and then they are translated into national legislation because obviously they are occurring all across Europe and all across different member states. So let's recap a little bit. We've mentioned the BFF practices, we've mentioned biodiversity laws. And again, what is the project actually? What's FarmBioNet trying to do? As I said, the project is aiming to enhance biodiversity-friendly farming practices in Europe by stimulating knowledge exchange across key stakeholders. But to understand how the project came about to have this aim, we need to understand how did the project begin, how did the project form? So let me give you some background on the project. So let's start with the European CAP network. So the European CAP network is actually a forum that the European CAP network is a forum that encourages organizations, administrations, researchers, entrepreneurs, and practitioners to share knowledge and information about agricultural and rural policy. The forum focuses on networking across experts, and one of the activities they encourage and they provide is the formation of focus groups. And I'm going to introduce to a specific focus group, which is called Enhancing the Biodiversity on Farmland Through High Diversity Landscape Features. So the focus groups are temporary groups of selected experts, which, as the name gives, focus on a specific subject. And you can see here, this is the report that this focus group produced. And at the bottom, you'll be able to see all the names of the authors that worked on this report. And actually, every single author is now part of the FarmBioNet consortium. So what did this focus group produce? Within the focus group, there were five mini papers produced, and these 5 mini papers included characteristics and benefits of the main high diversity landscape features, as well as good practices regarding those features. And the mini papers and the focus group also highlighted relevant good practice, highlighting the success factors and barriers for the adoption of the practices, as well as opportunities and challenges for developing solutions by the application of the high diversity landscape features. And finally, like any research, there's also an aspect on knowledge gaps, recommendations for research projects and ideas for other operational groups, or in that case, from the collaboration of all these partners within the focus group, and a few more, FarmBioNet came about focusing on practices that can enhance the presence of biodiversity. So FarmBioNet is a 3-year project. It started in January 2025, and it's going to run until December 2027. And now, with that in mind, as I said, some of the partners already knew each other, had previously worked together through the project, through the focus group. So let me introduce you who's now involved in FarmBioNet. So as you can see, we are all across Europe, as well as Serbia and Switzerland have joined the consortium. We have a great representation across different backgrounds, research institutions, ministries, NGOs, a small and medium-sized enterprise, farming operations, and advisory. Within the 13 countries, we have a total of 19 partners. As you can see in the map, some of the countries have more than one partner, 2 or 3. So within the partners, here are all of our logos. As you can see, in Ireland, we have 2 organizations. We have Teagasc, who is the project coordinator, and we also have the National Parks and Wildlife Services, amongst all the other partners. And focusing on the Irish partners, let me introduce and put some faces to the names. So within Teagasc, we have Dr. Sarla Kavanagh. She's the project coordinator. There is myself, who I'm the project manager, and then we have Niall Walsh, who's the researcher working on the research work packages, which I'll be talking about later on regarding the structure, overall structure of the project. And also in National Parks and Wildlife Services, we have Dr. Gary Goggins, who's going to be supporting us, especially in work regarding the Natura 2000 sites. So obviously, the project has this big goal of enhancing knowledge sharing regarding the BFF practices. But what other goals would we have? We have to achieve smaller steps to be able to deliver the overall project goal. So we've set ourselves a series of goals, including the compilation and sharing knowledge ready for practice. So focusing on being able to gather information about practices and being able to apply it as soon as possible as the knowledge is shared. There's also focus on innovation governance, environmental observations, and digital solutions. This refers to online tools, which I'll be talking about later. All of this to be able to support the Green Deal. And as a little reminder, the Green Deal is the European plan to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, and obviously biodiversity is also included within this plan. Also, we want to ensure that the information gathered is easy to understand, and it's targeted to stakeholders that will be able to benefit from having access to the information regarding the different biodiversity-friendly farming practices that are gathered from the project. Finally, and an important point as well, is to build trust between the main ACIS actors. So is to ensure that trust between the agricultural knowledge and innovation system actors, as well as organizations and institutions that use and produce the knowledge from agriculture, can be established throughout the project and the knowledge sharing. So to achieve these goals, the project has a specific structure, which is broken down into work packages. You can see here that all work packages intertwine and fit into each other. In the middle, we have 4 core sections. We have work package 1 and work package 2, which are the work packages Niall has been working on within Teagasc. and are focusing more on the research side of things. So finding out what BFF practices are currently available, relevant incentives, look at the Natura 2000 sites, as well as looking at some of the methodology on how we're going to gather all the information, what are the best practices regarding biodiversity-friendly farming, and then if there's any knowledge gaps or needs. And obviously, we need to keep in mind this is going to be across all partner countries as well as across Europe. Then we have work package 3 and 4, which are core to the project because that's where all the knowledge exchange is taking place. This is where we have the national networks, which I'll be talking about later, but this is where all the face-to-face interaction between the consortium and the stakeholders is taking place, where we're able to gather information from the stakeholders taking part and apply to other work packages, again, work package 1 and 2, where the research is taking place. Finally, we have work package 5, which is the decision-making tools, and again, these are focusing more on the online aspect and being able to provide tools that will support and be able to use by the end users. And finally, like any project, there is more aspects on project management, work packages, and coordination where I'm involved. We have communication and dissemination to be able to exploit all the social media interactions and be able that the information can be outreach by anyone who our Serbian partner is supporting us with. And finally, the work package 10, which is the ethics requirement. And this is important because since we'll be collaborating closely and interacting with the stakeholders, we want to make sure that any information we gather meets all the GDPR and ethics requirements, both at country national level as well as European level. So this is an overview of the project and how it's broken down. And to make sure that we can track progress of the project, we have set a list of objectives. So the main objectives are to establish 12 farming and biodiversity national networks, which I've briefly mentioned. These have already been established. These exist throughout all of our 12 country partners. Also to produce one European thematic network, which I'll be describing later on. To produce 2 decision support tools, as I mentioned, these are the online tools. I'll be explaining what they consist about. To produce 59 training materials, these will be in different shapes and forms. I'll be mentioning them when we talk about knowledge exchange. And finally, to hold and carry out 59 workshops to be able to interact and involve stakeholders directly face-to-face. So to measure the progress of these objectives, we have a series of outputs, which can be grouped in 3 main pillars, which are the core pillars of the project as well. We have the research pillar, the analysis and finding solutions. So here you can see how the pillars are linking back to the specific work packages. So again, we're focusing on farmers' needs, on the BFF practices, and understanding the benefits and the cost of these practices being implemented in the farms. We have the second pillar, which again is knowledge sharing, and we can see it's relating to the work packages where the national networks are taking place. And finally, we have the presenting, the communication. And here are some examples on how the knowledge transfer outside of the workshops will take place. So we'll have videos, practice abstracts, which I'll explain more about, testing of the tools, so making sure that those online tools, decision-making tools can be tested by the stakeholders involved. And then once again, communication and dissemination through presentations like this one, through our social media accounts and any other relevant events. So I'm going to talk you through some of the outputs, and we'll start with the ones in Pillar 1. So first of all, we'll focus on the case studies. The case studies are focusing on the Natura 2000 sites. So we're going to produce a total of 12 inspirational case studies, and the goal of the project is to present a report on a case study per partner country. So at the moment, we are identifying relevant farms in Natura 2000 sites to be able to start working on these reports. The reports will focus on the management of the land within the sites, as well as reviewing the benefits towards biodiversity and the farmer, and to be able to generate recommendations for generation of results across the wider Natura 2000 sites. Again, there's climatic and geographical regions differences across the regions of the project, but it's important to try and identify practices that might be relevant across Europe. And this information, as we mentioned, the Natura 2000 sites are key to protect habitats and species. So this information will help identify practical conservation actions that farmers can take to benefit particular habitats of a species, but also the production of the agricultural farmland. So those are the case studies. This is one of the outputs of the project. They will be in the form of a report where all this information will be gathered per case study per country. But we also have the European Thematic Network. So the European Thematic Network, it will be where all the information from all countries, as you can see in the map, all the national networks is brought together and stored and available in a single place. And the goal of the thematic network is to be able to have up-to-date knowledge regarding all the practices that will be recorded throughout the project. Also to have actionable information, so specific description on specific practices and examples, so report practices that have already been implemented in farmland. There'll be also information regarding remuneration, which is referring to incentives, which I'll be talking about later on in regarding the online tools. And finally, the end user identity, which is linking back between that trust between organizations and research institutions, as well as key stakeholders and AKIS players. Another output regarding the information gathered of the project is the knowledge transfer. As I said, there are different materials that we will use. So we'll start with practice abstracts. There will be workshops. This will allow interaction face-to-face between stakeholders as well as partners within the consortium. There will be national and international field or farm visits, which I'll be talking about at a later stage. We will also have surveys. Some of them have already been circulated. This will allow us to gather more information from all the stakeholders involved and be able to feed the analysis and research work packages to be able to produce further reports. We will have the case studies, as I just mentioned, there will be 12 of them, and they'll be focusing on Natura 2000 sites examples. And finally, we'll be producing newsletters. You can see a snippet here of our first newsletter for our Irish national network. For the national networks, we'll be producing a newsletter every 3 months, and for the overall FarmBioNet project, for everyone to stay up to date to see how the project is progressing, we'll be producing 2 newsletters a year. If you'd like to sign up to that, you can do that through our website at farmbionet.eu. So let me tell you about practice abstracts. So practice abstracts are really simple, easy to use and easy to understand information. It's a single file with a maximum of 1,000 characters. And here you can see a brief idea on what a practice abstract could like. Be a simple title focusing in one biodiversity-friendly farming practice, the description of the practice, and the biodiversity benefits of that practice. Throughout the project, we aim to produce a total of 50 practice abstracts. And while these practice abstracts will be available as standalones, we will also use the UCAP network database, where we'll be able to gather all the outputs produced by the project in the form of practice abstracts in a single place. So all these practice abstracts with all the practices describing from across all our partner countries will be available in a single place. As I mentioned now a few times throughout the presentation, we have online tools. There'll be 2 of them. We'll have a navigator, which will be focusing on the biodiversity-friendly farming practice incentives, going back to that remuneration aspect that we mentioned in the thematic European network, as well as the calculator, which will be more focusing on a cost-benefit analysis results. So let me talk to you more about the navigator tool. So the navigator tool will focus on a platform showcasing biodiversity-friendly farming incentives. So for each incentive, there'll be detailed information, which will include name of the incentive, eligibility criteria, description of management practices, as well as other detailed information such as requirements, level of support of payments, and link to the relevant supporting stakeholders. So the navigator tool is aiming to gather all the information in a single place, to be able for any stakeholder to find suitable funding opportunities that's rewarding the efforts of implementing BFFF practices. The tool will be region-specific, as we have obviously partners across all around Europe, and it will focus on both public and practice incentives. The idea of the navigator tool is that it will be interactive and it will have information in the shape of maps, graphs, of charts, and we'll be rolling it out later in the project, but we'll make sure there's enough time for us to get feedback from the stakeholders that are interacting with the tool to make sure it can be tinkered and made up to shape to make the most useful for the end users. The second tool, the calculator tool, it's going to be accounting on economic and non-economic factors. So for economic factors, the tool is going to take into account the impact of BFF practices on changes in yields, inputs, cost, labor costs, and opportunity costs, as well as non-economic factors. For non-economic factors, the tool is going to be focusing on two main points, which will be the negative effects of the BFF practice on production and the service for farmers, as well as the benefits of ecosystem services provided to farmers and foresters from implementing specific BFF practices. So the tool wants to provide insight for decision making for the end users, and to allow for the evaluation of trades-off and win-win on BFF strategies. So the tool will have information on 10 specific BFF practices. The idea is to be able to identify 10 practices that are common throughout all the countries within the project, so any stakeholder, independently of their location, can benefit from that tool. And as I said, with the Navigator tool, we will make sure that we can test the tool throughout the project and get feedback from all the end users interacting with the tool to see what may have to change or what information may be missing, or how it can be more user-friendly and interactive and beneficial for the end users. So throughout the presentation, I've been mentioning national networks back and forth, and I think that's one of the core aspects of the project. And this is where all the talking, all the knowledge sharing is going to take place, especially face to face. So as I mentioned, the project aims to establish 12 national networks, which are already live. And the idea of the national networks is to facilitate the exchange of traditional and evidence-based actions to promote biodiversity on farms. Finally, the national networks aim to include, once again, any stakeholder, farmers, organizations, researchers, advisors, and any other relevant actors. So a lot will be happening with those national networks. As I mentioned, they already exist, the 12 of them. So what are the national networks going to offer? There's going to be a series of activities related to those national networks, starting with 4 workshops to be able to discuss best practice and innovations. And again, here there'll be a place for the stakeholders to have a voice and let us know what practices they might be aware of, what they are talking about, what they're interested in regarding biodiversity and potential innovations. There'll be biodiversity-friendly farming related events. These are events where we, the FarmBioNet Consortium members, will be attending to be able to talk and interact with new stakeholders and make them aware of the project. I will let you know where we'll be at the end of the presentation in the following months. We will also have 4 on-farm national exchange visits. So we are hoping to be able to host the workshops and the farm visits on the same day to be able to maximize the time of our stakeholders. We are fully aware that it requires an effort and a time away from their farms to be able to attend to those events, but we need them because this is key for us to gather more information for the project. So the farm visits will include a farm walk around a farm to showcase and see examples of practices implemented in farms. And finally, we'll have 2 international exchange visits. So our partner in Romania, ADEP, will be hosting one of these visits where members from all the other national networks will be able to attend, as well as National Parks and Wildlife Service will be hosting one in Ireland. So these are the activities, but what are the benefits of being a member of the national network? So members will benefit from accessing up-to-date research. Obviously, research will be ongoing with the surveys that will be circulated throughout the project and the information they provide, and these results will be shared with the members of the national network, as well as being public once put in report form. They'll have the access to the online tools for them to test and give us feedback on how we can improve those tools. As I mentioned, the Navigator tool to find incentives, as well as the cost-benefit calculator tool. They'll have an input on shaping biodiversity strategies. Obviously, European projects as well focus on being able to produce information and research that can influence future policies. And it's really important to make a presence and make sure that BFF practices are taken into consideration into future biodiversity EU policies. There'll be networking opportunities. Once again, the national networks will be interactive face-to-face events where different stakeholders can meet and create new contacts and possible collaborations. There'll be increased visibility, presence in different media. I'll be talking about present media of the project already, and again, new contacts, new collaborations, as well as potential access to pilot projects. But obviously, if you are a member, we may have a few requests from you. Nothing hard to do, really simple, and I think it's really worth it. And at the end of the day, all we want is to meet you in person. So we expect for all national network members to at least attend 2 in-person meetings per year. And as I mentioned, what we're going to try and do is to host the workshops and farm walks on the same day to maximize people's time on the event. Also to share knowledge of BFF practices. So if you are a stakeholder and you are aware that you're already implementing some of these practices, share your knowledge, share your experiences, how long did it take, how did it work, and information that can benefit the project on the long run. Provide feedback on our own activities. We want to hear, did we do well? Did we host the workshop efficiently? Is there something we can do to improve, to make it more interactive, more interesting for our members? Also participate on the surveys. Again, this is key for us to be able to expand on the research and produce the necessary reports and contribute to the national and European discussions. When again, this is going to be actively happening throughout the activities of the national networks. So now we're going to focus on our national network, the Irish National Network. So we had the kickoff meeting in the 26th of February, and we had a total of 46 participants. We had a Menti to make the session a bit more interactive and understand who was there, what the stakeholders did attend our kickoff meeting. And as you can see, we had a decent representation besides foresters. Now, we knew they couldn't attend, but we expected some, but it's okay because now, since the registrations for the national network were open, we have a total of 53 members. And you can see once again here the distribution of stakeholders. If you're quick with maths, you'll see the maths are not adding up, and here there's more than 53 members. And this is because when registrations were open, we allowed people to select more than one stakeholder group because someone may be a farmer and forester, but just to emphasize the representation of the different stakeholders group within the national network meeting. And obviously, I've mentioned that the national network will carry out different activities, including workshops, and we are hosting our first one this month on the Thursday, 22nd of May. And it's going to be held in the McCall's Farm in Kildare, and national members have been signing up to be able to attend this meeting. And as I said, we're going to do both. We're going to host the workshop and the farm walk together to maximize people's time. But don't worry, there's still time. If this has incited you into wanting to join our network, we are still open. And here is an example of how to become a member. Really quick, really simple questionnaire. Question 1 is, would you like to join us? Yes or no? And if it's yes, you just need to let us know what the stakeholder group you belong to. If that's something you're curious about or you are interested in becoming a member, you can either scan this QR code. The questionnaire is password protected. You can see it at the bottom of the QR. Don't worry if you don't have a camera, if it's not working for you. If you have any questions, if you're curious, if you want to ask anything, please just get in touch with us. You can email us at farbionet@teagasc.ie. You can email myself as well. Just reach out. We can give you all the information you need for you to decide if you want to become a member or not, if you'd like to participate on this first workshop or not. And as I mentioned, there's been a lot of media presence already. And while the project only kicked off in January this year, and these articles are mainly focusing on the kickoff of the project, we're hoping to be able to collaborate throughout the project with media to make sure that the project can reach the most stakeholders possible. So Farmers Journal acknowledged the project. I would also like to thank National Network members Rachel and James Clayton for taking part on an interview in Countrywide in RT Radio 1. It's available online if you'd like to catch on that. We also have AgriLAN as well as the Irish Examiner. But again, we've been focusing on Ireland now because we're talking about the national network. But as I said, FarmBioNet has partners all across Europe. And the media in our partner countries has also been picking up. So I just wanted to show you some examples of a Romanian radio, Bulgaria, Spain, and Austria, as well as articles from another Austrian newspaper, Serbia, Romania, and Switzerland. And most of these articles are focusing on our kickoff meetings. So all of our FarmBioNet partners were here in February, where we all met. You can see a picture in the middle of the screen. So as I said, the project has only started, but we have a busy year ahead. So let me give you a breakdown of what's going to happen in the next few months for us. We've circulated the first survey to our national network members, where we're gathering information regarding knowledge gaps and BFF practices. we're going to host our first workshop. In our case, we're going to host it in May. Some of our partners will host it at the start of June. There won't be anything happening in July, but that's because there'll be a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and that's because all the results from the first survey will be analyzed and summarized and gathered so they can be reported and shared around August. These results then will influence on the outcome of a second survey and the questions within this survey. And finally, we'll host our second workshop around September, October, before the bad weather comes back in. Make sure we can get another farm walk within our network. And as I mentioned earlier regarding knowledge transfer, throughout the year, we'll send some newsletters. These are national network newsletters, which will be every 3 months, just to keep up to date with our members, let them know what's happening. But as I mentioned in the project website, farmbionet.eu, you can also sign up to a biannual newsletter just to keep up to date with the overall project progress. Also, we'll be at some face-to-face events, so if you'd like to come have a chat with us, meet us in person, learn more about the project, see how we're getting on since this presentation, you'll be able to find us in Bloom throughout the whole weekend. We'll also be in Moore Park Open Day on the 2nd of July, and finally we'll be at the Ploughing Championship. So for Bloom and the National Ploughing Championship, if you want to come by the Teagasc stand, we'll be there as well, talking about FarmBioNet. Also, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, my background is actually microbiology and greenhouse gases, and now I'm doing mostly project management. So if you have biodiversity questions, I would definitely recommend to join next week. So our project coordinator, Dr. Grau, can give you a presentation and some examples on biodiversity. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll try my best to answer all your questions regarding FarmBioNet project.
Brilliant. Thank you, Meritxell. That was an excellent overview of the project. Really exciting project by the looks of things, and it's great to see that multi-actor involvement of farmers, advisors,
Definitely.
foresters, policymakers, researchers. The list goes on. If I could ask you to just stop sharing your screen,
Yeah.
and just Catherine, really interested to get your thoughts on this. This is a really important project. Why are projects like this so important?
Because I suppose networking I'm particularly passionate about, have always been, because since I started this job in 2000, I've been involved and know of a lot of good work that's going on, and not enough people know about it. And you see projects happening, and the project team leaves after as projects do end. And I suppose what we want is a long-lasting impact. And I think this project is kind of really focusing on that to have a resource there for the future, So we really do need to make the most out of the good work that's been done, Mark. And I think that's what this project is. There is a good hope that this will pull all the good pieces together, be a pure network, as its name is.
I suppose one of the challenges, Meritxell, we have such a diversity of biodiversity across Ireland, but then you're going across Europe. What are the common themes or strands that you hope to pull together there across the project?
I think it's mostly identifying practices that will be beneficial across all European partners. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that while the geographical regions are different, obviously climate change is also a huge aspect that will have an impact on biodiversity. So being able to learn and gather information on how some countries have adapted to specific climate events that might be beneficial in a longer term for other countries that are experiencing shifts due to the climate change. I think that is huge. And then, as Catherine was mentioning, just solidifying this network, allowing all types of stakeholders to be able to talk to each other, to learn from each other, peer-to-peer learning. It's almost becoming a healthy competition of, oh, someone is doing that, but I could do that better. So trying to feed that motivation in a really healthy way that we can all learn from each other and encourage each other to do better in regarding biodiversity management.
I'm aware there are some networks already established in this area. Are there plans to integrate or link with those?
110%. That's actually something I didn't mention in the presentation. One of the goals as well is not just collaboration between our partners, but other projects that already exist. And it feeds back on maximizing the time of the stakeholders, spending time and involved in those projects as well. If we can bring events together from different projects, not only we get to learn, we are applying what we're preaching in a way, we're learning from other projects, things that we might benefit from, but also maximize the time of the stakeholders and avoiding a repetition of information gathering, of maybe giving people the impression that we're just going in circles and not getting anywhere because project and project again is asking the same questions, but instead actually focus on producing information that's short, sweet, and useful and ready to use.
I see from your website when I logged in there's an opportunity to sign up for updates. I presume that's some sort of newsletter.
Yeah.
If I'm an advisor, researcher, forester, policymaker in Ireland, how can I get involved? I know you showed that QR code earlier on there, but
yeah, of course. So we have, as you mentioned, we have the project newsletter, which is biannual, and that can be signed up through the website. But we also have the national network. So with the national network, all you have to do is sign up by filling a simple and short questionnaire. Anyone that's interested can email us at farmbionet@teagasc.ie. Asking questions if they want more information regarding those expectations, the benefits of becoming a member, what is required of them. And we can provide all the information. And it's as simple as saying, yes, I would like to join. And then the person joining will receive information on events that are happening, such as the workshop I've mentioned that we're hosting in May. They will receive links to surveys where we're trying to gather information regarding those practices, as well as invitation to farm walks and newsletter with the snippets of what's going on with the project, what the species to spot, kind of providing a bit of extra information, as well as an updates on any results the project has produced.
And I must congratulate you on the name of the project. It's have to say it's one of the less obscure names. It kind of says what it does on the tin. So congratulations on that. It's one of my pet hates. It's seeing some of these project names that are really hard to understand.
Thanks so much.
And I see you're working with the Adept group in Romania. I've had the privilege of visiting Transylvania, and a really progressive group, and very much working on the ground, bottom-up approach with farmers and landowners.
Yeah, there is. All of the partners have great experience with collaboration with the stakeholders, so it's really exciting to be able to learn from each other as well, and how to ensure communication and collaboration with all the stakeholders, and encouraging them to take part as well.
Excellent. Catherine, we have some questions coming through from our viewers.
We have, Meritxell, can I just confirm there what Mark was asking you about? Is there 2 levels of membership? I understand the membership, and but did you say there's a second one where you just get information?
Yeah, so this is referring to the newsletter. So again, we have the national network, which there are 12 of them. There's one per country, Ireland being one of them. And then we have the newsletter update regarding the overall project, which you can sign up through the website.
Super, that's what I thought you said, and that's great to just clarify.
No, that's okay.
And can I just come back to you on the network and the healthy competition? How are you going to think about where there are different approaches, and maybe somebody not in your network would have where it's a confusing area, I suppose. I've been working in it a long time, and there can be different approaches to management. So it's not an easy one, but I'm sure you're aware of it. And I suppose all our work leads to kind of farmers in particular want kind of simple messages and not to lead to confusion. How do you think you might avoid further confusion?
Yeah, so I think one of the main training materials outputs is the practice abstract. So I mentioned they're going to be single page information, 1,000 characters max, focusing on a single practice. So it'll describe the practice, it'll provide an example where the practice has already been implemented, and it's going to be ready to use. easily accessible, and they are going to be compiled in a database. And obviously, these will also be circulated as they are published with the newsletter. But the idea is that this information is open and accessible to everyone, and that's why all the information will be gathered within databases. Again, it's just making sure it's concise, and then encourage as well that peer learning throughout the national networks. So as the project progresses on the events on the national network, we'll be able to share that information with all the stakeholders taking part as well, and being able to disseminate face to face, or even during a farm walk being like, oh, this practice abstract we published last month, and here it is. You can see the hedges planted on the side of the field as an example. So really make it engaging and really simple to understand and be able to apply.
And I suppose what you're standing over is that you have evidence that that particular practice works, but there could be other alternative ones that work just as well. You can't do everything, is what I suppose I'm getting at. But you're,
Yes, definitely. And I
you
think
can't
there
be
might be
judging jury on every aspect of biodiversity, but
yes,
you stand over your examples.
exactly. And there might be practices that we are not aware of,
Yes.
and farmers have been doing for ages, and we need to record them, and it's another reservoir of knowledge that can be passed on to someone else that might benefit from it as well. So as well, I think the fact that we'll be able to interact with people face to face, might be able to find new information that no one has had the opportunity to talk about or share or even brag about.
Just a couple of specific ones. Have the 12 Natura 2000 sites been selected?
We are currently working on it. So all of our partners have offered a few suggestions for case studies. So are currently working on them to do the final selection.
Okay. Are you still looking for other ideas for those particular case studies?
No, we are actually trying to narrow it down because most partners providing more than one site as an example.
Okay. So so the 12 are the 12 sites in Ireland or across Europe?
No, across Europe. So we're gonna have one per country, per partner.
Oh, then that
Yes.
makes sense. Yeah, that you can. You're not looking for a sweep here. Yeah. Again, just going back on the network question, Mark kind of touched on it about existing ones and the burn bio one. I presume you're aware of that and will engage with those. The question is like it's already there, not to be repeating the same thing.
No, but I think it's important, definitely collaboration. We cannot be preaching stakeholders to come give us information and us not acknowledging other projects that have done some of their groundwork already. So I think it's really important as well for us to reach out, or any project that might come across our project, ask questions as well. And we are currently working with a few projects to see where there's potential collaboration for future events.
Yeah. All EU and UK biodiversity recovery targets have been missed for many years and are just recycled. Is there any hope that biodiversity will recover, especially in the intensive sector? It's a hard question for you, but I suppose it's just,
It is a hard
are we
question
doing
for
the
me.
same again? What are you doing different?
We hope, while I cannot answer, and I suppose no one has a glass ball that will say as well climate change and any other aspect will be solved. I think we can try our hardest to encourage people and show people that it might be a lot easier than we think to implement some of these practices that will benefit biodiversity. And again, sharing that knowledge that is easy to apply might be a step forward, rather than kind of falling into this circle or habit of just hoping that by establishing policies and goals that feel never ending will make a difference.
Okay, and this question leads on from your answer there. Beyond identifying knowledge gaps and exchange of ideas with champion farmers, are there plans for the farmers that do not engage on biodiversity? How do we get practice change with this group? Knowledge alone won't lead to implementation. So the hard truth.
Yes, so that's one of our challenges with the national network, and I feel with most of these biodiversity projects, the mentality is that, oh, it's for people that are already interested, that already want to increase or incentivize presence of biodiversity in their farms. But it's not the case. What we want to do is showcase that anyone and everyone is capable of increasing biodiversity in their farms, and they might not be aware they're already doing things without realizing, and they have biodiversity in their farm and may just not be paying attention or realizing it's there. So again, the national network is to be able to showcase to any stakeholder on how that biodiversity can be occurring in a farm. And I think that's why farm walks are important, as well as having those workshops where people can share knowledge. Because you might be casually talking, realize, oh wait, but I do that. never
I
thought
suppose the
about
worry
it,
is,
but
I suppose the worry there is that the people who will come to the workshop and the farm walks may be the already converted.
yes. But then they can go and try talk to neighbors, and they can try, and we can also encourage them to spread the word. And again, maybe feeding back into that healthy competition of like, we are always going to be picking what someone else next door is doing. So if something is changing but it's not affecting the productivity of the farm, why cannot someone else do it? So it's finding a way where the message can be spread. And again, simplifying the information, making accessible to everyone may be key to that as well. But it is a challenge, and it's going to be something that will have to be worked on throughout the project.
Can I just ask a question there, if you don't mind, Catherine, just in relation to, I know farmers are probably the main audience here, but policy, agriculture is largely driven by policy or underpinned by policy. What are the plans to engage with policymakers and to support policymakers in devising and rolling out measures that, innovative measures maybe that have occurred in other countries? Is that one of the is that a plan within the project?
Yeah, so obviously the national networks, once again, are trying to target any relevant stakeholder, and policymakers being one of them. And I think for the policymakers to have the opportunity to talk with people on the farm doing the day-to-day might be really advantages for them. And then from the project point of view, we're gathering the information, the surveys, analyzing the information from the surveys. These will all be in reports, which will be accessible. And these will also be obviously disseminated into much shorter formats for all of our audiences to have access to and see what the project has been finding. So if we can identify the different practices and summarize them, that will benefit policymakers as well on how they can approach their next steps, and keep that communication open at all times and updating and seeing what everyone has to say regarding all the results within the project.
And have you considered using maybe more interactive techniques, even modules, or I'm just thinking of some of the legacy outputs that the project might have, rather than just reports or paper based
of course.
recommendations.
So part of the idea of the workshops is to be able to also disseminate the results that we've been producing. So as I mentioned, we'll have workshop 1 happening in May, but we're going to have another one in October. Before October, the results of the first survey will have been analyzed. So we'll take advantage on that second meeting to be able to explain and break down what the results were gathered from the first section and feed on to the different events. So again, making sure that we can take advantage on the opportunities we have during face-to-face meetings, as well as other events that we'll be attending, where we'll be there in person to talk about the project itself as we progress, see how we can adapt. And that's why we want feedback as well from our members. What are you learning from us? Is there any other way we can provide you that information that might be more useful or accessible to you, rather than sending a newsletter?
Just a few specifics that may help you, Meritxell. Can farmers, or indeed advisors or other people in Northern Ireland join?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a problem at all. Again, I think the more diversity, the better, the more we can learn.
And a question about your definition of a farmer, but I think knowing how I filled in the survey, you can fill a few, to be, as you said, you can be a farmer or whatever. So you're not very strict on, I must have a herd number. Yeah. So
no. Any shape or form. It's a simple stakeholder grouping. As the surveys roll out, there might be more specification regarding a specialization, but no specific information might be required. More just to understand what type of background the participant is coming with.
Yeah, so the question here was somebody managing land, so I would encourage them to put down
100 them. Landlords, again, anything, any type of background is welcome, because we want to learn from everyone, and everyone will bring their own point of view from their own experience. And I think that's really important as well, to have great representation on the results of the surveys and how practices are interpreted across different stakeholder groups.
And just one more, Mark, before I hand back to you. Very interesting project, but it is ambitious to deliver its intended outcomes. That's fair enough. I would be concerned at the complex needs of what is needed at local level for our farmers in Ireland. Would be lost in a possible oversimplification of trying to bring the needs of all regions together. I know there'll be common themes, but there are always local differences and needs. I think it's a good point, but
It is.
How do you address that?
Yeah, It's a good point, and it's a good question on how to address it. And I keep going back to it, but having the opportunity to involve the stakeholders throughout the whole project and development of the project, being able to talk to them face to face will allow as well on networking within the networks of people that might be coming from the same local area, which will be able to share that knowledge. And I think that's one key aspect of being able to hold those meetings in person as well, to have that network, to make sure the local aspect is not lost while the project is also looking at the bigger picture. And this applies to every country. As I said, there's geographical climate changes. If we compare the south of Spain with our partner in Sevilla to us, we're looking at complete different climate situations. But that doesn't mean there might be something from our end or from their end we need to keep in mind for future at the same time. And at the end of the day, it's experiences, is being able to learn from each other.
Catherine, could I ask you just a question there? It goes back to one of the earlier questions there around that reaching that more, I suppose, harder to reach, or those people that aren't necessarily engaged in projects like this. And the fact that this has been called a crisis, a biodiversity emergency in Ireland. Are the measures that are being presented here and in other fora, do you think we're going far enough and fast enough in relation to this?
And I think they're the group that I particularly work with, Mark, that, the ones who, so I suppose the benefit of the network here would be that the inspiration, and the more it's in the media and the more the topics are discussed, it does seep out. I think the peer pressure, the media, the general public, if the farmer is hearing it on local is really good. I know of local farmers who are, who influences on doing them, when you realize who has influenced them on doing something on biodiversity. It may not be the policy, it may not be the money, it's not always money, it may not be. So it could be a local person talking about it, children, usually local, I think. So the fact, coming back to your question, if the project will probably engage with a lot of people who are already interested, that's by its nature. But maybe its outputs, and I think that's one thing we really need to keep an eye on, is how can we push that to the next level, but at least Meritxell is very conscious of that, I think. So that's really good. How we,
and maybe there is that opportunity to engage with schools and colleges around this project, given that, it's very much focused on that local biodiversity aspect.
Definitely. And I think bringing the younger generation is almost putting peer pressure in the house. Then you learn something new in a school and you want to brag, you want to show that you've learned that, and you want to teach your parents maybe. And I think of that from when I was young and we learned about recycling. We didn't recycle in my house until we were taught in school. And I went back home and I was like, we're doing this now. So maybe it needs to be the same with biodiversity. We just need to encourage younger generations to go back home, be like, I like to see more insects. I like to try and find a way for something to be present in the farm we might not be seeing now. So it's triggering that curiosity and realizing that it might be a lot easier to do than we think.
Well, look, Meritxell, I want to wish you the very best with the project. It's a big undertaking to coordinate a project of this scale. And we are being joined next week by your colleague, Dr Catherine Keena, who's going to be talking to us about farmland biodiversity and boosting biodiversity on the farmland. So these two webinars are very complementary of each other. So look, we will, I'm sure, touch base with you throughout the project. It's a big project, and 2027, I think, is what you mentioned is the time frame within the project. So I'm sure people will be able to get more information on the website. We've circulated a link on the chat there that people can access that as well. And so, look, thanks again for joining us, Catherine. Thanks so much for assisting with questions this morning. And as I said, next week, Dr. Catherine Keena will be joining us. So we look forward to hearing more on that topic. So until then, enjoy the weekend and the fine weather, and we will talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.